Let's get it on then, shall we? Mwah. Welcome to Sex on the Peach, your weekly Hump Day dose of everyone's favourite untalked about topic, sex. Let's get honest, let's get open, let's get comfortable, and let's get into this week's show. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this Hump Day's episode of Sex on the Peach. I'm your host, Peach, and today we will be discussing sexual fears, or rather, things that can hold us back from feeling fully open and liberated within our sex lives. Within this episode, I'll be speaking on some of my own experiences and also answering some of your sexual fears that you have sent in. As always, I appreciate anyone who has felt able to do so and for trusting me to talk these through with you. So I hope there is some help to be taken from today in one way or another. Please do know that whatever you are experiencing or worrying about, it is and will be completely natural, completely normal, and there will be so many more people with the exact same concerns than you could ever even imagine. We're often brought up with the statement, a problem shared is a problem halved. But as we grow into adulthood, that for some reason seems to become more and more daunting. I personally think it's because we're taught that when we reach a certain age or a certain point, we're supposed to have everything together, when the fact of the matter is that will literally never be the case. And also not something we should really be striving for. And I say this because we need to be open to the fact that day after day, week after week, year after year, life will ebb and flow. Even in those times when we do feel like things are settled and in place, there's never any telling what the hell life is going to throw at us. And also just staying open to the fact that we as individual humans are constantly learning, constantly growing, and constantly changing. So when we start to feel insecure about voicing problems in general, the likelihood of us having the confidence to voice our fears, problems, insecurities about anything within the sexual space is low. But I promise you, sometimes just saying things out loud, just speaking things into some form of existence, you will immediately feel like a weight has been lifted. Because it's no longer this secret, uncomfortable thing that you're fighting or battling with alone. Yes, I obviously recommend that you speak about these things with people you can truly trust, and putting this information into someone else's hands can feel scary, let alone the actual fear itself that you're going to speak about. But if you can take anything from today's episode, I hope you feel encouraged to maybe start up a new conversation with friends or with a partner and open a space for people to be honest and vulnerable about this topic, where you can support each other, let one another know that it's okay to have these fears, and also that it's possible to work through them. So, let's face the fear and do it anyway. Here is today's show, MissionScary and ClimAnxiety. Okay, so as we are already well aware of on Sex on the Peach, because it's the literal reason this podcast exists, sex is something most people are terrified to talk about. Generally, as a rule, anything in life that requires us to be vulnerable or feel exposed will elicit a level of fear or insecurity. Fear is, of course, a completely valid emotion, but it is a jarring one at that and can be damaging because we convince ourselves it's protection or security. Whether it's fear to apply for that job you really want, or fear of entering into a new relationship, or just to take a new step in our lives. It seeps into everything, and all it's really doing is holding you back. It's also hard to make logical or reasonable decisions through fear, because if you'll allow me to get scientific for just a tiny moment, when you're experiencing fear, a part of your brain, the cerebral cortex, basically shuts down. And yet, you guessed it, it's the part of the brain that takes care of judgment and reasoning. So all you're left with is the amygdala, the small emotional center of your brain, which immediately gets to work to try and set your body's response to fear into motion. I know that some people find science boring, but we are, of course, never taught just how much of a huge part it plays in our sex lives, in our sexual thoughts, in our sexual responses, in everything. So it's important. You're essentially sitting in a place of emotion with zero logic behind it. Sex is already an emotional space, so we're looking at emotion upon emotion here. So I get it. It can be terrifying. But you owe yourself and deserve to find the best way for you to move through this, because you deserve to live the sex life you want and desire. Imagine you've spent your whole life picking out your clothes and your outfits based on the internal thought of how other people will see you and what they will think about your fashion choices. And therefore, you're never truly wearing what you want to. And then you reach a point where you think, fuck this, no. If I want to wear that fluorescent orange pantsuit or those fringed leather trousers or whatever the hell you feel like, then you're living your true, authentic, fashion-loving self and you can walk outside feeling fabulous as fuck. Well, this is what I want for your sex life. I mean, and your fashion life, but that's not what we're here to talk about. It's very, very easy for us to be really quite awful to ourselves and our own worst enemies when we're looking at sex, because we are always looking at it from another person's receptive viewpoint and worrying about what another person is going to think of us. So really, fear can truly cripple our genuine wants, needs, desires, and pleasure goals in the bedroom. I would love if you could take a minute, even if that means you pause this podcast to do so. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and think about whether you are truly living the sex life that you want. Do you feel stuck in a rut or routine? Are there any deep-rooted little things that you might be like, actually, I'd love to try that, but never have? Do you feel truly liberated to express yourself when you step into the sexual space, either alone or with your partner or partners? Taking a moment to have that kind of honesty with ourselves can be really uncomfortable, but I encourage you to allow the discomfort to come, if it does, and see what that really brings up for you. Because my goal is for you to acknowledge that it exists and start to think about how we can move through it so that you feel as free to express to your partner or partners what you would like to try as you would telling them how you'd like to take your coffee that day. That's not going to come overnight. It's going to take time. It's all small steps to undo a lifetime of being taught that we should not be speaking about this stuff. But think about a world in which you are living your fullest, most liberated sex life and how that might feel. And therefore, it becomes a positive goal and something to look forward to rather than something to avoid and run away from. The majority of sex-related fears stem from a place of rejection. And I don't mean approaching someone in a bar. Sorry, I forgot we live in 2022. I don't mean sliding into someone's Instagram DMs and them not being interested. Of course, that is a part of it. But looking further into the sexual relationship space, I mean the fear of telling someone something we would want or maybe like to try sexually, and them laughing at us or thinking we are weird or expressing that they are put off by it, or in today's language, that it gives them the ick. So the first thing that I want anyone listening to remember, the way people react to things is on them. It's not on you. That might feel like a difficult thing to get your head around because we are all ingrained to take pretty much everything personally. But if someone reacts in any of the ways listed above, that comes from a place of their discomfort or their potential emotional immaturity, or maybe a lack of sexual knowledge and understanding. Because it's not to say that everyone will be into everything we desire or want to try, but any sexual partner who cares and respects you will definitely come from a responsive place of being willing to listen and talk through it with you. And if you have a sexual partner who doesn't have the space to do that, then unfortunately, you probably have deeper problems in your relationship that will need looking at. Because no partner should be dismissing you and your feelings, whatever facet of your partnership you're talking about. If you are being open and vulnerable and expressing what you want, you are being the best possible advocate you can be for yourself and for the life and sex life that you desire. If someone makes you feel bad about that, then you are in more of a place to make an informed decision about how you might want to move forward in that situation. You deserve a partner who cares about fulfilling your needs. So in one way or another, you'll be one step closer to getting those needs met, even if that means you might have to think about finding a partner who cares and is invested in that. I'm not sitting here and saying that this is all easy. It's all a work in progress. I consider myself at this point a relatively good communicator and definitely someone who advocates for myself. But even recently, I found myself in some vulnerable situations that have been scary and challenging for me, as that's something I definitely have walls around. But every time we take a risk and overcome a fear, it's growth, it's progress. So on that note, before I move into the fears that have been sent over, I'm going to speak on a few of my past experiences in the hope it might help anyone going through something similar. So, for a long time, I was only able to orgasm externally or clitorally, and it started to become a real thing in some of my relationships. So then every time we would have sex, I would be completely in my head and worrying whether I would tap into that magical, internal, penetrative orgasm. And it just wasn't happening. Really, climb anxiety. And what was a shame is before that, I hadn't cared. I was really carefree in our sexual endeavors and very, if it happens, it happens. But ever since it became a problem for someone, it got in my head and for the longest time held me back from enjoying penetrative sex because it's all I could think about. In the end, I really had to take some time with myself because, as I've mentioned before, I can be very routine in my solo play and actually explore that properly, as I thought, once I figured this out for myself, I can then help my partner out because I also appreciated they wanted to make that happen. But then we started putting in some teamwork to get there. And I have to tell you, it was some of the least sexiest sessions I have had in my entire life. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It was a means to an end. And I loved having someone who was in it with me. And it was funny and it was awkward because it was literally a case of figuring it out bit by bit. Using hands first and being like, okay, maybe there, yeah, kind of. Literally a constant conversation until we managed to find our way together and get there. It still isn't anywhere near as easy for me to orgasm internally, so it takes work. And I think people are afraid to have those moments where you're working through things like that because they can feel awkward and uncomfortable. But once we got there, and it only brought us closer together and made our sex life all the better for it. However, every sexual partner is completely different. So that also means just because I figured it out with one person and what worked for us does not mean it's a sure thing with the next. But it does mean that I felt a lot more comfortable having those conversations and having those times that are less than what a movie would consider sexy whilst we find our way together. And it also shows you whether a partner is invested in your pleasure or not, which is hella important. So allow yourself those less than sexy sessions. It's all a learning curve, and it will only make things better and more connected. I also thought, being a woman and a vulva owner, that the first time I had sex with another woman and fellow vulva owner, that I'd surely be a pro, right? Wrong. We don't even get good heteronormative sex education, but that is nothing compared to the minefield that is queer sex. And the fact you are offered literally no information about it whatsoever. You are truly left out in the rain to figure it the fuck out for yourselves. Something I am actively looking and hoping to change. But seriously, it's a mess. I have to be completely honest. Anyone I've had sex with that has identified within the queer space, the open-mindedness has been on a very different level. And I think it's because we've all had to work it out together, because we were given nothing. So, even though I'm a vulva owner and a masturbation queen, and I know how it feels to be touched as a woman, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Way more than when I lost my virginity to a man and penis owner. Yes, I'd seen lesbian porn, but seriously, I felt clueless and weirdly more pressure to know what I was doing. But as with everything else, sexual encounters don't come with a map. And there was only one way through it, and that was, you guessed it, to talk about it. Did it ruin anything? No. Did my sexual partner run away laughing? No. It just allowed a space for both of us to express what we wanted or didn't want, what we were willing to try and experiment with, and also for me to be like, yo, just direct me seriously. The good news is, sex is largely intuitive, if you're actually paying attention, which you should be. So for anyone who finds themselves in the position that I was in, you may surprise yourself with how everything feels completely natural and easy once you get going. And it's just the same as feeling your way through a sexual experience with any new partner, whatever gender or sexual identity. All I can say, as always, is talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. It's going to be okay. And if it's not, they're not the sexual partner for you. My last sexual fear I'm going to speak on before I move into responding to the ones that I've had sent in today is one that I am actively still working on. I will go into more detail on this in an episode about sex after trauma, but I was in a relationship with someone who was quite heavily into BDSM. And that was a relationship that in its later stages became really quite abusive. I wasn't quite on the same level as that partner in terms of their desires within the BDSM space, but I was always open to trying and exploring because I like to try and find the things that can work for two people, even if you can't cover the entire spectrum. I'm also someone who is happy to play with the pleasure-pain line, and that used to be a huge part of my sexual practice. And usually when you're engaging in kinks or BDSM activity, the trust and communication is really on another level because you're truly putting your safety into another person's hands. So it has to be, and also has to come with a level of aftercare. However, this partner did not respect those boundaries, and there were plenty of times that I was left both physically and mentally scarred from our sexual experiences together. It was unsafe, it was disrespectful, and it was traumatizing. I have since had therapy for a lot of this, but I still have the fear of truly opening those doors with another partner, and that's something I have to be honest with partners about if there are things that they want to try that bring up traumatic or triggering feelings. So it means that stuff has to be taken even slower and even more carefully, which might feel like it isn't the rampant sexy activity that people imagine it to be, but it's necessary. It's something I'm continually working on and something I'm hoping I will get past at some point. All we can do is keep trying. It was important to me that I share these things with you today because I think it's easy for me to come on here and talk a lot and say, hey, do this, do that. But anything I've learned. And I'm still learning and going through all of the same things you are. I'm in this with you every step of the way. I don't have my sex life completely figured out. I don't know if anyone ever does. And so when I talk about ways to help not hold yourself back in sex, I am actively working on exactly that in my own ways also. I see you. I got you. We're all in this together. A collaboration, not a performance. Okay, over to you. Let's look at some of the sexual fears I was sent in for today's episode. Growing up religious, as much as I'm not anymore, I still feel like I'm fighting with these ingrained morals that sex and anything more sexually adventurous is somehow wrong or perverted, even though I don't actually believe that to be true. Okay, so I don't know if you heard my episode last week with my best friend, but in that I spoke about having spent my younger school years at a Catholic convent and how I'm absolutely sure it affected my journey into my sexual life and experiences. For me, that was to rebel against everything we'd been taught, which I use in huge quotations because we were taught very, very little. So many of us grew up and spent our childhoods immersed in a specific religion or religious traditions, whether that be by our family or our school, that have widely discredited views on sex, sexuality, and everything surrounding that. And so in one way or another, people are literally spending time overcoming religious sexual shame. The thing is, with the majority of religions, and I am not anti-religion, whatever works for you, but that's for you and you alone, and not for you to push onto someone else or utilize to judge someone else for wanting different things. Religion can have a very all or nothing fundamentalist way of thinking behind it, which is motivated by shaming and scaring people, so that people are led to believe there is a singular correct way of living and existing, and everything outside of that is simply wrong. It doesn't allow for critical thinking and essentially affects the development of certain things, like how to trust our intuition or how to manage doubt or guilt or shame, all things which are incredibly important in our sexual partnerships. So this can leave people scared to ask for what they want sexually, or feeling like their sexual place is to provide, or even the extremes that if a sexual experience doesn't fall within their religious confines that they've been taught, they'll be punished for it as a sin because you're being judged by a holy standard. The best thing you can do is start with yourself and your pleasure practice, because you need to feel comfortable that whatever feels good is good. And you may feel more comfortable exploring this alone first than with a partner, because it allows you the space to learn self-trust in what your intuition is telling you. You need to find the way to trust in yourself that whatever your very natural desires are, do not harm you, do not harm others, or some higher power. They provide only joy and pleasure for you. So if something feels good for you, keep going. And if it doesn't, give something else a go. Listen to yourself, and trust that nothing you're doing is wrong. You are a sexual being, and experiencing pleasure is your right. And then you will hopefully find it easier to communicate these things with a partner. I would love to know that you have the space to communicate the way you're feeling to a partner in general. Therefore, if you do decide to try something new, you can take it slow and make it something you work on together, so that you can learn and see that only good things can come from experimenting and exploring within our sex lives. Be patient and compassionate with yourself. Religious conditioning can be damaging because it's divisive and it can be unwavering. We aren't better people for choosing to live above our sexual urges. We're just holding ourselves back from living the way we deserve. Strongly religious people are actually at a much, much higher risk of experiencing or developing sexual disorders, and also much less likely to get help for them. and there are more people out there fighting their own sexuality for the sake of their religion than I can even bear to go into right now. It all, as always, comes down to a complete lack of sexual education. So changing the narrative for yourself is also a really good place to start. If we're ever taught to believe that whatever God we believe in is a loving God, then that God would be supporting sex as a loving and pleasurable experience. Next one. My weight, being a plus-size woman, the idea of someone seeing my body and being intimate is terrifying. So my best friend and I actually also spoke about this on last week's episode, as she spoke about being in a bigger body and how that had made her feel sexually. So I would recommend checking that out, as we did speak on it a fair bit. But this fear is so unbearably common, and I hate that we have lived and grown up in a society that makes anyone in a plus-size body feel this way. It really makes me unfathomably angry. Having sex for the first time with someone in general can be nerve-wracking, and if we're fixated on body concerns, it can absolutely magnify that. For a start, you do not need to be fully naked during a sexual encounter if you do not want to. I've previously revealed that that is not really my bag. I love wearing things during sex. For me, an element of mystery is just something I always find sexy. So I would take some time out for you and give yourself permission to find what makes you feel sexy in that respect. Try out different kinds of lingerie, or even something like a lace bodysuit, a silky slip, something that you can leave on during sex until you feel confident enough to be fully naked, if that's ever even what you want. If something makes you feel sexy, wear it. Good sex starts with confidence, so you just need to start taking some small steps to what will make you feel your most confident. We are all, especially women and vulva owners, so afraid of our bodies, but confidence, whilst easier said than done, is going to be your number one priority here. Find out what makes you feel best, from what you're wearing to even playing around with lighting, so that you have control over these elements. I promise you, you do not want to be having sex in the pitch black darkness, and you owe yourself better than that. But you can take charge in creating a lighting state that makes you feel at your best. Lamps, candles, they all create atmospheres that just make us feel more comfortable in the moment. And also, if you feel like you're in control of the logistics in the situation, that will in turn give you its own little confidence boost. If you ever do come across someone who thinks it's okay to judge or body shame, I would say make it a zero tolerance policy for yourself and say, bye-bye, get in the bin and not the recycling. We do not want you coming back. Thank you very much. I am quite firmly into our looks being a secondary product anyway. And so if you're with partners who appreciate you as the whole beautiful person you are, they won't be noticing the things that you are insecure about, because we are absolutely the ones who notice those things the most. I would recommend taking some time to truly look in the mirror and remind yourself that you and your body are worthy and deserving of pleasure, of appreciation, and of good sex. Our inner critic can be a killer, but it's highly likely that the last thing on your sexual partner's mind is going to be critiquing your physique. So take time to appreciate yourself before going into a sexual encounter. Stop seeing things that we've been taught as flaws and embrace every single inch as just another part that makes up the incredible, whole, sexy being that you are. If there are positions that make you feel specifically uncomfortable, if you're able to, communicate that. If you don't feel ready to do that, allow your space to take the control over the positions that you do move through. Because once you start to feel confident, you can continue to build on it and explore it more. Please just remember, you do not need to apologize for your body, ever. You are beautiful and you are sexy. Fear that my partner is comparing me to his previous sexual partners. This can be a really tough one, and I say this as someone who has been on the receiving end of it more than the other way around, just because I've had a fairly vast sexual past, and it has always been heartbreaking to hear someone I love and care about feel that way, because comparison is certainly not something I've ever invited or brought into the bedroom. And therefore, I would like to believe that other people wouldn't want to do so either, but I know it's not always that simple. If you have a relationship where you can and want to communicate about each other's pasts and previous partners, that can be great because it opens channels of communication that are never a bad thing. But there definitely needs to be an element of sensitivity around these things because it can easily bring up feelings of insecurity. And if you haven't communicated about it and you feel like you want to, set some boundaries and ground rules for yourself before doing so. There are things that are relevant and important to be spoken about. STI status, any past trauma, because these things can directly affect your present sexual partnership. But as for the ins and outs of their actual sex life together, if it's not going to be helpful, don't ask. A really, really weird thing for any of us to get our heads around is that with every sexual encounter we have, we learn and we grow. Well, we should anyway. So, yes, there may be things they bring to the bedroom that they have learned from previous relationships, but that's not a bad thing. You will most likely be doing the same thing. And as we grow sexually, we realize what feels good and what doesn't, and we do tend to take that into our next relationship. So as long as you are having a good and satisfying sex life with each other, that's all that matters, as it may be our previous experiences that even got us there. Also remember that the exact chemistry you share with your partner is completely unique. There is no one else like you. And so your sex with your partner is your sex with your partner as its own beautiful thing. It's easier said than done, but comparison is truly a waste of time and energy. And instead of thinking about sexual pasts, take a moment out of that and instead consider your sexual future and where your journey might take you together. Also, if you're spending time worrying about that, you won't be fully embracing your sexual time together. So try to tell yourself that if you aren't comparing your partner to your past sexual partners, then he won't be either. Be kinder to yourself, enjoy everything you and your partner have together, and let the past live and exist where it belongs. Okay, concerns about bleeding or queefing with a new or first-time partner and not a long-term one. Okay, so someone also sent in a fear about farting in the bedroom, and honestly, I'm just going to wrap that and queefing. Seriously, what is that word? All into one answer, because essentially they're all just natural bodily functions. They happen, they exist, and really, to put it in the least eloquent way possible, we just got to get over them because they are not worth spending time worrying about. Like really, you just got to laugh them off and continue. If we're really going to talk about queefing, it's completely normal and you shouldn't be concerned about it. It literally happens when air that has been forced into your vagina needs to get back out again. So if you're having penetrative sex and you're thrusting away, it's going to repeatedly push air into you. Like it's not a black hole or an endless cavern. In the majority of bodies, the vagina ends at the entrance to the uterus or the cervix. So guess what? It's got to come back out. I've had sex before where it has literally felt like I have an actual air bubble inside of me because of it. Not my fave, but it is what it is. Like, yep, sure, it can make a funny noise when it comes out, but it is certainly not worthy of getting in the way of your sexual experience. And it happens to everyone, I promise. If the first time you have sex with a partner, you want to minimize the risk of it happening, you can try to do this by slowing down the pace a bit. You can change the angle of entry with pillows or choose a position that you know is less likely to make it happen. Thrust less deeply. And you can also play around with using a little bit more lube because that can help too. Switching it up a lot can increase the likelihood of it happening. So you may also want to reduce the amount of positions you move through on your first encounter. Like really, hopefully, you're having sex with people who are the tiniest bit mature. And so just be prepared to laugh it all off. Sex involves our whole bodies. That includes its fluids, its functions, and queefing is something that is literally exacerbated by sex. Sex is also playtime. And so if you can introduce a bit of laughter into your sex life, it's only going to enhance it anyway. Sex can be super awkward in many ways. Bumping heads, positions that just don't work, ending up with lube all over your hands and not knowing what to do with it. It is not some picture perfect thing that we see in movies. It's messy, it's funny, and getting through these slightly uncomfortable moments is only going to create better connections. It also lasts like a second, which is nothing in comparison to the amount of time you actually spend having sex. Queefing, farting, if it happens, it happens. Laugh, let it go, continue. I promise, it's fine. When it comes to bleeding, if you find that you are bleeding frequently after sex, I would highly recommend visiting your doctor just to completely check that everything's okay. Because it happens sometimes, sure, but if you feel like it's a risk of happening every time you're having sex and that's why you're nervous about it happening with a new partner, please do get that checked out and please stay on top of your sexual health appointments. It's really important. However, it's certainly not something a partner should be bothered about in the moment because we're adults. Periods happen. Bleeding after sex happens. If you have a feeling it could definitely happen and you feel comfortable to, communicate beforehand that it sometimes happens and ask if you can maybe throw a towel down. But please don't spend your sexual encounter worrying about it. We can deal with semen. We can deal with a little blood. If a new partner has issues with things like that are completely natural and completely normal, then again, there's a lack of sexual maturity and understanding that needs to be acknowledged and looked at. Please do not let these very, very common things that our bodies do hold you back from enjoying yourself sexually because they happen to all of us. You're in good company, I promise. Anxiety over penis size. Okay, so I received this one well over 10 times. And in the same way that I hate that we've grown up in a society that makes people feel like there is one ideal body type or shape, I also truly hate that we've been taught that bigger is better when it comes to penis size. But listen, penis shame is real. I can tell you this, men and penis owners worry far, far more about penis size than a female and vulva owner partner does. I would also hope and presume that if you have male and penis owner partners, they will also worry and care even less so, because if someone owns a penis themselves, then they should appreciate and empathize with the pressure and the bullshit surrounding the whole topic. The average penis size, when erect, is 5.2 inches. That's the average. So yes, there are penises bigger than that, but there are also plenty that are smaller. When it comes to pleasure, your penis size has absolutely no effect whatsoever on the pleasure that you are capable of feeling, and also very little effect on the pleasure your partner is capable of feeling, which is all the most important thing. Having a bigger penis does not equate to more pleasure during a sexual encounter. If you have sex with women and vulva owners, I really implore you to remember that for the vast majority, penetration is not the most sexually pleasurable activity for them. That's not to say we don't love it and enjoy it, but the majority of nerve endings for a woman and vulva owner are found in the clitoris. And the nerve endings that are found internally in the vagina are positioned in such a place that deeper penetration doesn't make all that much difference or create more pleasure. When it comes to penetration, the difference may come from a feeling of fullness, but in terms of pleasure, it makes little to no difference. And penis size has literally no effect whatsoever on clitoral stimulation, which is mostly where the magic happens. I promise, women and vulva owners do not care anywhere near as much as you think we do. And as I mentioned in the body image question above, anyone who thinks it's okay to body shame you in any way needs to be let go and moved on from, because we don't tolerate that in these parts. If you sleep with men and penis owners, especially if you are what is considered a top, from what I understand, obviously it's not a topic I can speak on from experience. So from what I know from conversations with male and penis owner friends of mine who have sex with other penis owners, a smaller penis can be preferred. Anal sex takes a lot of preparation. And even then, the rectum does not have the stretching capabilities of a vagina. So a smaller penis can feel more comfortable than a larger one. I've had sex with a hell of a lot of different penis sizes, and I've personally had more challenges with people who are larger, because for me, it can be a little painful and also just a bit limiting in terms of positions. But as with everything, we've worked through it together and found what feels pleasurable for us both. And that's been the case for every size and every shape and every penis. You work together and you make it work. When you feel the anxiety start to creep in, take a second to think about whether you would enter a sexual encounter with the intention or the thought to judge a partner on their penis size or their vulva or any other body part. Really, we want to be seeing our sexual partners as whole entire beings, not as singular body parts. I know that sometimes porn can play a part in this for men and penis owners too. So please do remember that porn actors are mostly specifically hired to have large penises. So if you're consuming a lot of porn, it can become very easy to start seeing this as normal. But it's completely skewed, as is a lot of stuff that is related to porn and real sex. And if it's getting into your head, then I really recommend taking a break from watching it, because it's just not real. I really mean this. No one is ever going to think about the size of your penis as much as you, whatever size you are. And you owe it to yourself to own what you've got, focus on your partner's pleasure, invest in the moment, and then everyone is having a good time. We have to get past this size nonsense, because it really just doesn't matter. Can you stop having sex midway if you're just not into it or can't get into the headspace? Absolutely. No one should ever want to have sex with someone who isn't into it or doesn't want to for any reason. This comes back to basics. Consent is everything. And therefore, if you are having a sexual experience and it's not for you, you have to communicate that. Yes, it can feel awkward and uncomfortable, but when it comes to sex, your partner or partners need to respect you, and consent is the very base foundation of that. The first time you have that conversation may feel daunting, but once you've spoken it out loud and put the information out there, you will feel so much better for it. Again, if you have a partner who is not supportive of that, there are deeper rooted issues that need addressing, because it should not be an issue. If it's something that's happening fairly regularly, it might be something you need a deeper discussion about, as it may mean you aren't feeling pleasure from the experiences you're having. And that's definitely a cause for conversation as to how those sexual experiences can be better for you. But listen, we all have days where we're just like, nope, not for me today. And if you're feeling that way, just be honest with your partner or partners. And also, when we have partners who are understanding and respectful of our needs, that's sexy and only enhances our sexual connection with them anyway. So the answer is yes, you can. You don't ever have to have sex when you're not into it. There's a few other fear-based questions that came through, but they are going to be much more helpful to input into upcoming conversations I have with guests very soon, who will be able to answer them from specific personal experiences, which I know will be much more beneficial to you. So please keep tuning in, and I promise you they will be acknowledged and be answered. Before we go, some other super common sex fears that we haven't touched on today, but that you may be experiencing. That sex will hurt. Sex shouldn't hurt, but sometimes it does. Make sure you take it slow, use lube, loads of it if you want or need, and keep communicating. No partner should want you to be in a position that's causing you pain. Fear of not being good. Anyone who has listened so far will know that I am anti using words like good or bad in bed. All we have is what works or doesn't work for us. Sometimes we're just not compatible with another person, and that's okay. And remember, it's a collaboration. So pay attention to your partner, communicate with them, and create an environment where you are invested in each other's pleasure. Sex is supposed to be fun. It is not a test. Fear of STDs. This is super common and also valid. We desperately need to remove the taboo and shame around STDs as a whole. If you can catch a cold from someone sneezing on you, of course we can catch things by rubbing our genitals on each other and putting them pretty much everywhere. If they weren't considered so shameful, people would feel more comfortable and confident in being open with people about them. But you should have an honest discussion with your partner or partners. Make sure you test regularly and stay safe in your sexual practices. Saying or doing something awkward. I mean, it happens. Sex isn't perfect. It's not choreographed. Laugh it off. Move on. And lastly, fear of what to do after sex. Everyone has a different preference of aftercare. Some people like to cuddle. Some people like to take some time out. Women and vulva owners, I'm going to recommend you haul ass to the bathroom and pee, because we all know we've got cystitis just waiting to happen if we don't. Some people want to sleep. There are definitely options. And as with everything else, ask, communicate. You might have different preferences, and if you're looking to a relationship with that person, it will need to be addressed. You might want to talk about what felt good, or even what you'd like to try next time. A little sex review, if you will. But just talk it out and enjoy your post-orgasm, hopefully, glow. All of these fears are completely normal, completely natural, and unbelievably common. And no matter what your worry is, the best thing to do, just talk. Whether that's with the person you plan on having sex with, really the most important one, or a friend, or even a sex therapist if you feel that might be necessary. Give yourself the best possible chance to stop holding yourself back and embrace the sex life you truly want and deserve. So, there we go. I hope that anyone experiencing fear or anxiety in the sexual space, which is most likely every single one of us, has heard something today that they can relate to or resonate with, and that it helps in some way. For something that is supposed to be enjoyable and fun, sex sure comes with a lot of stress. But take comfort in its weird way that all the things we worry about, the person we're having sex with will be worried about their own set of things too. It's time to think less, relax more, and start sharing our concerns with confidence that sex deserves to be spoken about. For anyone who has contacted me with their fears, please do feel free to follow up. And if anyone wants to contact me further on this matter, my Not Gonna Lie anonymous link is always open, as is my email, sexonthepeachcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation today. And I look forward to next week as I have a very brave and honest discussion with a friend of mine about a matter that stood in the way of her sex life for 4 whole years. I hope to see you back here then. Thanks for coming. Thank you for tuning in to Sex on the Peach today, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find and follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Sex on the Peach Cast, and you can also get in touch with me at sexonthepeachcast@gmail.com. Please do continue to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you next week. Love, Peach.